It's lovely to be here at Witchfest Online. My name is Christina Oakley-Harrington, and if you know me, it's probably from Treadwell's bookshop, my central London bookshop, which specializes in witchcraft and paganism. Today we're going to talk about witchcraft, how to become a witch, what it means to be a witch, and what are all the pitfalls of joining a coven, or if you wish, not joining a coven. The whole idea of what it means to be a witch has changed in many people's popular perception dramatically over the past 15 years, and that makes this subject really, really timely. So let's start back at the beginning. My beginning was in 1987, and at that point, the idea of being a solitary witch was a really new idea. It was a kind of a revolutionary idea. Scott Cunningham wrote Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner, and Marion Green in the UK put out a book on the solitary witchcraft path. And that was really revolutionary because up until that point, the only way to be a witch in any recognized way was to find yourself a coven and ask for initiation and be initiated into that coven and receive your apprenticeship in a coven. And what did a coven do? Well, covens were, and in the initiatory tradition are, handed down. There's no central Vatican authority or anything equivalent to that, but what there is a shared understanding of what the tradition is, and it's passed down in an initiatory way, and then through apprenticeship in a group. And group belonging is really important, of that feeling of camaraderie and the experience of camaraderie. And so I started out as a solitary, as I said, in 1987. I made an altar, I learned what the 4 elements were, I got my first tarot deck and stumbled around with that a bit. It's never been my strong point. And started scrying, spending time in nature, and honoring the wheel of the year. That might be familiar to a lot of you who are listening and watching this video. After 2 or 3 years, I realized that I'd gone as far as I could on my own, and I wanted to be committed in a tradition. I wanted to really have the benefit of people who've been doing it for their whole lives, and I had a calling, sort of a spiritual vocation to be a priestess to the goddess. And so I set about hunting to find a coven. And I was in London, with a very, very dense, large population, where Wicca has a very, very long and established history. And so the way that I went about finding that coven, and by now we're in 1989 and 1990, was I went along to pub moots, which were a very big thing at the time. And I found out through word of mouth, it was before the internet, who to stay away from, because they were in fact pretending to be a coven, but there were occasional sexual predators and people pretending that they were passing on the tradition of initiatory Wicca when they were in fact not doing that, but actually looking to abuse and take advantage of women. And so it's a very privileged position there to be, know the right pub to go to, know the right place where the moots are, right, have the right kind of people pass you the right information about what's not safe. For in that case, I was a 26-year-old woman, and where was a safe place to go. And that community safety was and is the main way that people find the initiatory tradition. Let's fast forward to now. And now we have the internet. And certainly in London, there are fewer and fewer pub moots. It's just a generational fact that younger people go less and less pubs. And the sense of, in London anyway, in the UK where I live, the community solidarity, the sense of community is more fragmented as people have gotten older and moved more out of London, and younger people, as I said, are not so much pub people. But you'd think, okay, well, the safety mechanism of how to find where are the good covens in the tradition that are solid, loads and lots of different personalities, lots of different approaches, lots of different styles, but all within this tradition where it's safe, where it's genuine, and you're going to be okay if you go there. Well, we have the internet. Now I work in a shop And people come into Treadwell's regularly, including a lot of younger people and people who are saying, look, I'm a solitary practitioner of Wicca or Witchcraft, or by a lot of different names now. Bought my candles, bought my crystals, doing my sage smudging, doing my purification rituals, doing my tarot reading, doing my runes, but I think I want to join a group. And I said, well, don't you? And you know, they say, yeah, but the internet's very, very, very confusing. You know, so I'm sure I'm not saying anything that you all don't know, that there's so much online that we're in this kind of opposite problem rather than being of too little information. There's so much that it's very hard to, can be really, really hard to sort wheat from the chaff. And so we have a really different kind of issue now. What even is it to find something valid? What's the legitimate expectation of what is even to be in it? And then, of course, as I said earlier, what are the signs of a safe and genuine group in the initiation of the craft? So let's start with what the tradition is. If you want to join a coven, there's two main different kinds of covens in the UK. Listeners in the US, please don't jump up and down. It's a little bit different there. I'll touch on that in a minute. In the UK, there are two kind of styles of groups that call themselves coven. I'm going to start with the younger iteration of that word. And that is a group of friends getting together to do some cool stuff. This is the kind of coven that is in a much less dramatic and horrifying way, the kind of coven that we saw in The Craft in the movie 1996, or more recently in the 2020 The Craft Legacy film. Or you find it a little bit, that kind of a coven, in maybe the touching a little bit on it in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, or the Sabrina Teenage Witch thing, where it's a women, essentially group of women friends, young women usually, getting together as equals and exploring magical powers. There may or may not be some devotional work to the great goddess of nature. That's usually there in the background, but the main focus is to get together as women friends, support one another. When it goes well, it's very, very feminist, very empowering, and some very cool adventures, like climbing up hills at night and doing some cool rituals, maybe a bit of levitation, maybe some tarot readings together. When it goes wrong, it's Mean Girls. So when somebody comes into Treadwell's now and they say, look, I've got my crystals, got my tarot cards, I'd like to join a coven, they may be asking me, they may be saying, look, where can I find some other young women, if they're women or non-binary, say, where can I find some young people like me where we can get together as equals and as a friends basis and put something together that works for us, that we create. And for that, I just say, that's not something we can do, but we do know that lots of young people hang out, particularly in East London, in the DIY and warehouse scene, and there are lots of amazing people, and just keep asking and use your own friendship network. You'll find some good people. Always remembering, if it goes a bit Mean Girls, run away, because you should never be belittled. You should never, in a group of friends, be made to feel like you're the not good enough one. That's against the whole idea of that kind of sisterly support coven. I'm going to turn now to the second type, which is the older variety, where a coven is a word that is used for the unit in the religion of Wicca. So it is a grassroots, handed down tradition. Anybody here who's familiar with traditions like Lukumi and Santeria is really familiar with the Afro-Caribbean religions, where there's not a central authority, but the authority is the tradition. And Initiatory Wicca is one of those. It's like that. And so for the covens of that, you're looking for a religiously oriented or spiritually oriented group, is that the way to put it, that's headed by a high priestess, usually with her companion and supportive high priest. And they themselves have been initiated in the initiatory tradition. In the UK, we have mainly two, and these are denominational names that go by the names Alexandrian and Gardnerian. You'll find these buzzwords thrown around a lot. In the UK, these are the two oldest Wiccan traditions that are flourishing in a large scale, and they are the most established. And so if you go online, those are the kind of words that you'll be coming across in the UK as the ones that are most established here. Those ones, in this older sense of the word, although they're flourishing now, are entered with the idea that you become a member of that group to apprentice in that tradition, which is the rites and rituals and ways of working of the Gardnerian and Alexandrian tradition, and making really close bonds with those people because it's absorbed really through the pores of the skin. There's a pretty heavy time commitment. You're basically asked I'm in the coven that I joined when I was 26, 27. One of the first things they said to me was, get to know us, because this is a slow process where you need to know and trust the people you're thinking of making that commitment with. And are you going to be around for 5 to 7 years? Because that's how long it takes, roughly, not always, sometimes a bit less, for the teachings of the traditions and the ways of doing it, the ways of doing the ceremonies, the ways of the approach. That's about how long it takes to be in a group for that stuff to become well enough to either go off and do your own thing, or maybe just set up your own group, or to just stay and be a happy member of the group that you're initially joining. I was really, taken aback. I was like, what do you mean 5 to 7 years? Who knows? But, once I decided I wanted, I said, yeah, I'll be here 5 to 7 years. So this entry into the tradition is done by an initiation ceremony. So the person's initiated into a coven, but you're initiated into a tradition. It's a very big step. If you've ever known anybody who's become ordained as a minister, or has become a priest, or even if you're Catholic, you've got a cousin or an uncle who became a monk, very big spiritual commitment to walk that path. And this is the initiation into Wicca is like that. And the unit of practice, again, is the coven. That's what that kind of a coven means. So it's good to have a sense, if you're thinking about wanting to work in a group, whether you're looking for what's right for you in your life, and what you're called to do is whether you want to do some stuff with friends, in which case you're looking for a friends group set up, or whether you're saying, I would like to apprentice and be almost ordained in the religion of Wicca, and I've got 5 to 7 years, and I'm willing to give up every second or third Saturday night, usually is when the group meets, willing to ask my family to accommodate that, asking my partner to accommodate that, willing to get babysitting for that, for 5 to 7 years. And it's completely cool if that's not your bag. Absolutely grand. It's always good to remember that you don't have to do either of those things. There's a lot of support for solitary practitioners. And a lot of that support is given through lots of a range of different groups. For example, Children of Artemis has social meetups and teaching sessions. There's a lovely solitary practitioner teacher lady who's got little videos every day. Her name is Rachel Patterson. My own business, Treadwell's, we have workshops that teach some of the practices of solitary witchcraft. So the whole business of joining a coven is completely optional. It's whether it calls you. And that's really important to think, oh, should I? Leave the word should out entirely. I want to concentrate on talking about the coven and initiation into the tradition, which in America is known mostly as Gardnerian-Alexandrian, and I'm going to talk about that tradition because it's the main tradition in the UK. And it's one about which there's things that you should know, things you absolutely should know. I started this whole talk with discussion of safety, and I'm going to really kind of concentrate on that, because that's the most important thing, is that you are confident and safe every single step of the way. How do you find an ethical group? That's the first thing. Unfortunately, from time to time, there are unscrupulous people. It doesn't happen very often, but it does. Usually a man who wants to be king of the witches usually has some sort of a deluded grandeur about manipulating women, usually younger women. And thank heavens that our community is very good at stepping forward, and we're trying to get better at stepping forward about helping people who are looking for our tradition to understand what should and shouldn't happen. Let's start positive. Let's start with what you should be finding. If you're looking for a group and you find some people who seem promising, then you're going to be looking, first of all, is there a high priestess? And I would say be very, very careful if there is a group that is run by a man on his own. And I'm sorry, this is a gender discussion, but we're speaking historically that our society has. Look very, very carefully at those. Our tradition, the Gardnerian-Alexandrian tradition, groups are led by women. And often there's a very supportive, wonderful male partnership involved in the partnership. But when you see a man on his own who says, I have covens, that should be a very big alarm bell, because nobody has covens. We serve and we are members of a tradition. We don't use that language, I have, when it comes to covens. Secondly, when you meet people, do they seem kind? Do they speak kindly to others? Would you use a shortcut that I saw recently on TikTok? Would you leave your dog with them? Do they speak kindly of others? Do they speak kindly to animals? Do they refrain from gossip? Are these the kind of people who you would feel like, yeah, I would be happy to be I'd have a happy hangout with them. I'd introduce my mom to them. Because one of the teachings of our tradition is that we're meant to be helpful. We're meant to behave ethically. We are never meant to be divisive, and we're all people, but we are not meant to be on a pedestal. We are meant to be kind and helpful, first and last. One of the things that is said in my little corner of the traditions, when we make a promise that people who lead our coven leaders in my little corner, it's just not about, we'd say to a person who's considering joining a coven that, we might be honored to be able to participate, and we'd say, I will serve your spiritual life. And when you're meeting with these coven leaders or coven leader, you're lucky to meet somebody, that should be a feeling you should get. There's also external verification. They should be able to tell you in a general way who can vouch for them being genuine. If you live in Gloucestershire, or you live in Glasgow, or you live in Aberdeen, or you live in London, or you live in Slough, or you live in Cornwall, and somebody says, I'm a member of this tradition, they may not give you a lot of detail about who else is a member of the group, but you should meet some of them along the way. But they should say, please check up on me. Please check up on me. Here are some people you can. If, on the other hand, the people leading the group say, everybody's against me, don't speak to anybody, I would say that this should be a very, very big red alarm bell. A healthy group in our tradition will not tell you to not speak to other people. It will never isolate you from your friends, your family, or from other people in the pagan community if you move in those circles. They should also give you some other people to verify with. People that they're not close to even, people who they're just acquaintances with. Why is this important? This is important. All of these precautions are important because one of the features of Initiatory Wicca, Gardnerian-Alexandrian, is that when a coven meets, there are oaths of secrecy in the initiation. We take an oath of secrecy to protect the privacy of other people in the coven, and we take an oath of call it an oath of secrecy, but it's an oath of privacy about what happens in the rituals. Why on earth does that exist? It exists because we're an inheritor of something called the mystery traditions. And those mystery traditions go back to ancient Greece and Rome, the myth of the initiatory mystery religion of Isis. There was one of the Great Mother. And those are ones where the aim is, as it is in Wicca, to give the people in that coven really a sense of peace and freedom and transformative experiences in which they encounter bits of the unknown, unexpected things, delightful, happy, beautiful things. And it's an act of respect. Those things are not gossiped about elsewhere. So, but with secrecy comes a need for extra precautions around safety. So things that should never be said to you or anybody looking for a coven, like that, sexual things will happen, but you can't talk about them. That should not happen. If that ever comes up, we would say, please report it to your local Pagan Federation officer or report it to Children of Artemis, because something is very, very wrong if that has been heard. That is absolutely not what joining a group should involve. It's fraudulent, and somebody's exploiting what they think you think a witch is. Why on earth, given all of this, would a person even want to go through with this? And I'm looping back a tiny bit to say that when it goes well, and in the vast majority of covens, this is the case, that the coven is a unit, it is a group in which this very, very beautiful tradition is passed down. It was Wiccans who set up Children of Artemis. It was Wiccans who set up the Pagan Federation back in the 70s through a sense of service to the wider community of anybody who wants to worship gods and goddesses. And for people like myself who have a calling to serve in a really committed way, it's a way to express calling to priesthood, to be a priestess, a way to serve the great goddess and my personal patron goddess. It's a way to say that it's a way to share the turning of the wheel of the year in an intimate group, in a group of close friends and people, and a place of tremendous safety, and a place from which one can do some good in the world. There are some resources which have developed, which are online resources as we've come into a new era that are serve as some kind of as a verification and filtering. These are very good to check out. One of them is called Gardnerian-Alexandrian Seekers. This is international, and that is on Facebook. Another is Gardnerian Initiates and Seekers, and this is also a Facebook group. If you're not on Facebook for any other reason, I would urge you to make a Facebook account for that, because those groups, those two groups, are contain listings of verified and vouched for groups. So it's not random. It's not anybody claiming anything. In order to be listed on those groups and participate in those groups, all those groups are known and checked out. And that's very, very important. Treadwell's is also available there. Anybody, if you're considering a group anywhere in the world, it's not that big a tradition. Alexandrian Gardnerian is not that big a tradition. It's pretty big, but we're very well networked. We're like a big, say extended family. That's not quite right, but we're an extended community, and we can verify one another. So if you want to, you're always welcome to write to me at treadwells-london.com. And within one or two phone calls or one or two messages, I can find out whether the group you're looking at is considered safe and is what they say they are. But it's not just me. There are other people as well, again, on those Facebook groups. I'm just going to end by saying, what is it to be part of a tradition in America? I promised I'd mention America, and I will. In America, there are many more traditions sprung up in the 1970s and 80s. and 90s. So those are newer traditions, very often very creative, often have their own ways of working, and they're not as known to me, but a lot of the same guidelines for your safety apply, which is, do you feel comfortable? Your gut is your best instinct. Am I treated kindly and courteously with respect? Are my concerns addressed in a non-defensive way? Are my needs addressed in a non-defensive way? Do I like these people? Do I want to spend time with them? Do I enjoy hanging out with them? And do I feel that I'm not put down behind my back? Spiritual life is a place in which your inner life is meant to expand, not a competitive place, and it's not a place where you should feel put down, nor a place where you feel like you need to climb any sort of social hierarchy. Spiritual life is attendant to somewhere that is immensely private, tender, and personal, and guard it with your life. Nourish it, tend it, but remember, your first job is, at the very least, your job is to protect it. And any sincere Wiccan priest or priestess, whether they've been one for 2 minutes or whether they've been one for 32 years or 40 years, they'll remember that the first duty of a spiritual life is to make sure you do no harm. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up and say thank you so much for listening. And whatever your spiritual life is, you have my blessing. Tend it, love it. You're very, very precious. Thank you. I'll leave it there.